Hello, everyone. This is obviously the dance portion of our show. Welcome to Meet Our Mentors. My name is Art Gruenberger. Won't you please help me welcome my guest today, Sesame Street puppet wrangler and puppeteer extraordinaire, Lara MacLean. Yay, Lara!
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Art. Thanks, Brad. And thanks, Liz, also.
Brad is our tech guy from behind the scenes, and Liz, of course, the producer of the show. Thank you, Laura, for being here with us. I'm really excited to get to chat with you a little bit. We met each other back in 1990, somewhere, in Humboldt County at the what was it?
94.
Was it 94? And it was the Muppets Teach Puppets, and it was that great 2-week long workshop where who was it? Marty and
Jerry Jewell, Kathy Mullen, Jane Henson. Who else?
Carolee Wilcox.
Carolee Wilcox. That was amazing.
And Jerry Jewell. You said Jerry? Yeah, like
Jerry Jewell was there for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. That was a blast. And you cracked me up the entire time. You have such a great sense of humor. And then I got to you snuck me on the set at Sesame Street, and I got to sit on the stoop and see things from behind the scenes. And so it's really, really good to get to chat to you with
nice
you right here.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So you are a puppet wrangler for Sesame Street and other shows as well, or just Sesame?
I have in the past. I think that it's kind of been my way of breaking in, even though I've been doing it for so long, and I do it really well, which is a blessing and a curse, because I love puppeteering also. But I think my forte in puppeteering is, I think, right-handing. I think recently, since like 2016, I've been in the remote control business. On Amazon's The Tick, I was the antenna for Peter Serafinowicz.
That's so cool.
For 2 seasons. I did not do the pilot, but I did everything else, and that was great. And my wrangling skills actually really help on that as well, because even though I'm puppeteering the antenna, I'm also sort of default in charge of the batteries and making sure everything's working well. And basically, a company in LA makes the suits, kind of drops it off, and then it's sort of my problem to troubleshoot and that sort of thing. So it's kind of, I've gotten hired several times for having both skills, and that's been great. And like I say, we're talking about mentors, and I'm jumping ahead, but I did, even though I went to Sarah Lawrence College, I managed to do a guest year for my junior year at the University of Connecticut. And what I remember really learning from Bart Rockaburn, who was the professor who let me in for that year, was that it's good for puppeteers to know how to do everything. And I think that's the old school way. And there, I feel like, and I think there's a lot of puppeteers. Actually, there's, some younger puppeteers now that do both. Also, they build. And, if you want a puppeteer, you need to build your puppet, and you need to be able to fix it if it breaks. And I know that there's a bunch of puppeteers that don't know how to do that. And I think, that's not so great. And I'm knock on wood, employed most of the year. I barely have any time off because I can use my wrangling skills, my building skills, my armaturing skills for photo shoots, and now my remote control skills. And just to put it out there, just like I was saying to you earlier, that's my job currently is on Apple Plus's Helpsters, which is a Sesame Street production.
Oh, it's a great show.
And the puppets are not made by Henson, but I managed, because of my experience on the Tick doing those antennas. I said, "Hey, you're doing remote control eyes on Heart, the big orange puppet, walk around puppet. Basically let me do it." And you know what? They listened, which is amazing, right? How often does that happen where people actually, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea." So, once in a while things do work out.
Nice. Well, we're gonna have Brad cue up the video. It's a great little video. I forget who produced this video, but it's a really lovely video about what it is to be a puppet wrangler. And then we'll talk just a little bit about that after we see this video. So go ahead, Brad.
All the way to the wall.
How does Elmo look?
That way.
You look okay. Let me see your mouth.
We're gonna move around. We might see it on the next one.
That tickles.
Thank you.
Okay.
When I watched Sesame Street growing up, I wanted to get through that television screen. And I thought, somebody must be helping Big Bird. So this job means a lot to me. It's my dream come true. My name is Lara MacLean, and I'm a puppet wrangler on Sesame Street. When you get to set, you go right to the puppet boxes, or the Muppet boxes, whatever you want to call them. And you have all your things there that you need, including some black boxes with all the props and puppets for the day, and you're ready to go. A good puppet wrangler is organized, reads the script, knows what's going on, so making sure the puppets always look the same, are always looking good. Sometimes we'll see a fuzz and we'll run in and say, stop, we have to take the fuzz off. Or if a puppet breaks or rips, we have to sew it right away and very fast so we don't take up much time for production. I grew up in Moorestown, New Jersey. When Jim Henson died, I was a senior in high school. For his memorial service, I said to my parents, I need to get to that memorial service. And it was here in New York. And they said I could take the day off from school. I got someone to drive me, and I went to that memorial service, and it was life-changing. That is really what kicked me and said, you got to go for it and just start banging on those doors till you get through. I went to Sarah Lawrence College, and while I was there, I got an internship at the Henson workshop. I finished college and I kept in touch, and I finally got a job back at the Jim Henson Creature Shop in New York City, sorting Big Bird feathers. So as a puppet wrangler, I get to take Big Bird to lots of different places. Somebody needs to go and put them together. I'm an old tree. My favorite things to do is when they need an extra puppeteer and I'm around, so they'll ask me, hey, Lars, you want to be Rosita's right hand and play the guitar? And I'm always like, yes, I do, because it's the best time ever. It's a lot of fun.
Do you have a favorite thing that you've puppeteered on? Because I mean, this is like super backdoor way to get into, to be able to play around, right? Do you have a favorite thing you've done as a puppeteer so far?
Well, I think I am really proud of doing the Tick, because what's awesome about that is they just found me online, and obviously they brought me in and interviewed me, and I passed the test. And they wouldn't have kept me on for 2 seasons if I hadn't done a good job. But just the fact that no one else was there to help me. I can't say, oh, yeah, well, this person brought me in, or that person also helped me in, whatever. It was really just me. And that makes me really proud that I got through it. And I got to, and I met all these people that I'd never met before, and that it all worked out. And so I'm pretty proud of that, I think.
When you got on the Tick, did that, I mean, since you were like, since all of your other things were so tied around Sesame Workshop, and did that begin to open other doors for you, or?
There's been a couple jobs I've gotten since, because, people from that other world, which is like, sometimes I call it real television, which is terrible, but it's like or I'll say adult television, which sounds like XXX, but it's just like, normal dramas or whatever. I think I got on a show called Dietland, and I did like a tale, just a tale for the day. And then actually recently, I guess it was in January, I got to do some animatronic babies for let me think of the name. It is Russian Doll, and was one of the shows, and Severance. So basically because of the Tick, I've made contacts that do think of me as a animatronic RC type person, puppeteer.
Fantastic.
Which is cool. But yes, I still wrangle, and when Helpsters is over early December, I'm probably going right back to the Henson shop, and we'll be wrangling again and still doing it's hard for some people to do both jobs, because they'll be on the set and they'll get too jealous and we won't. But I I'm able to say, okay, now I'm doing this job, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And then when I'm puppeteering, I'm going to do that to the best of my ability, and I'm able to swap it over. But sometimes that's really difficult for some other people.
Is there union problems to that when you're on set doing a little bit of both, or is that?
What's awesome is because of the union, the SAG-AFTRA union. Whenever I puppeteer, I'm going to get an extra paycheck. So and it used to be so back when I started, Sesame, I think, had more funds, and one of my mentors, Kevin Clash, he was there in the beginning when I started and really taught me a lot. And he's the first person that would, I'll call it, throw me in. He'd throw me in. Okay, Lars. I mean, our famous phrase that a lot of puppeteers say will say, "Hey, grab up a butterfly," which means like just do a butterfly in the background. But when you were talking about Ruth Buzzy, that was around the corner when there was that bigger part of the set, and at the Furry Arms Hotel, there were all those windows, and so you'd have to fill them up with some extra puppets. And I remember my first puppet ever on Sesame Street was a orange honker in the window of Furry Arms Hotel, and so that's why I had to join the union, the SAG-AFTRA union. Actually, then it was AFTRA, and then SAG, but now it's together, which is great. And I would get some extra money on top of my normal wrangling.
Fantastic. And get to do some puppeteering, which is win-win. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very fun.
That's great. How was it to I know, like speaking of Kevin Clash, there's been shifts in characters. Some people retire, and how is it when someone for you as the Wrangler, how is it when someone else comes in and takes a character that's been being performed by someone else? Is that hard for you to adjust, or is it just like, okay,
it's different. It's every puppeteer likes things their own way. Maybe they want a different style rod, a thicker rod, or like with Matt Vogel, now that he's Big Bird, he likes they've really adjusted his head to be different than what Carol Spinney used. He likes the inside of his head? He likes a lot more padding on the inside. And sometimes, how, I'm just assuming that people know things, and they probably do. So there's a helix inside Big Bird that really helps keep your arm up. It's like a structure inside the puppet. So I guess when Big Bird first started, he didn't have that structure. So that's why if you look back at like the first beginning, you'll see it more of a hump, because it'll be like his head, but then the structure was built inside to help Carol keep his arm up. And sometimes Matt doesn't like that. Sometimes oh no, that's in my, it's an extra pound, I don't want it, or it's impeding me somehow. But then he'll change his mind, and I think everybody changes their mind too. Like Ryan, who does Elmo, now he started using the thickest rods, which we call piggy rods, like Miss Piggy, because she always had the thickest rods. And now he's changed his mind. He's like, I like medium rods too. But so everybody's different. You just have to learn what everybody likes, and I think that's about it.
Yeah. So I know you do lots of damage control while shooting, right? I mean, you've got to come in, you've got to repair, you've got to do all of that. What's the very worst thing that's happened to a puppet that you've been able to sort of recover from?
Okay, well, I think I have to go back in time to when there was something called the Fashion Cafe in New York City, and Big Bird was there, and so was Penny Marshall. And somehow Penny Marshall, I guess they were both on stage, and Penny Marshall tripped and grabbed onto Big Bird's dead arm, which means the right hand, right? Because that's
so. Did Carol whack himself in the face with the other one then, or because they're connected, right?
Well, here's the funny thing. The other funny thing is that Matt Vogel knows that it was him there, but Carol was still alive when it happened, and then kind of adopted the story as being his. So I'm going to say it was Matt Vogel there. And so she doesn't just pull on the dead arm. The arm comes all the way off because they're basically on with Whopper poppers.
Oh no.
Those big snaps and that fishing line. So I think because of the the fishing line. It didn't really go anywhere. But I think I like just kind of ran up and like crammed it in or something. It's all kind of a blur, but but it did. And this is pre cell phone, pre iPhones, pre everybody having a video or a camera. But it did make the paper. It did make the New York Times.
Nice. Perfect. So we're going to talk a little bit about your mentors now. And I know mentors is a weird word. It's like, oh, that's somebody that's guided you over the last 30 years of your career. But, for me, it's the people that have influenced me along the way. And I think it's, just reading through, your bio, I think it's maybe the same for you. And so who's the guy that got you over into Muppets? It was a guy in PR, wasn't it?
Right. So when I was at Sarah Lawrence College, I was in a film class and I overheard someone talking about an internship at the Henson Company in public relations. And, I didn't care. I just needed to get my foot in the door. Right. So I went up to that person. At least they were really nice and told me everything they know about, what was going on with that internship. So I got an interview and it was with this gentleman named Robert Boyd. And I got the job. I think so. I was 19 but I turned 20 pretty soon because it was like, the end of that semester. So it was January. I knew I got the job and then I was going to be starting in January. So in February, I turned 20. So I think it's kind of cool. I started that early. But anyway, so Robert Boyd, he knew why I wanted to be there and he didn't mind. He's the
first one that went into a different department trying to get into the department, right? I mean,
right. So he was like, oh, you want to be a puppeteer? Okay, I'm going to get you into these Muppet workshops by Jane Henson, like right away. So I did a couple of Muppet workshops with Jane Henson. And then he took me down the street to the Muppet workshop and gave me a tour. And I remember he had me touch my first Muppet, which was Harry Monster. I don't like it when people say Harry because it's Herry, so it's more like Harry Monster, right? And he took me to basically my first video shoot, which was at the Carriage House, which is 225 East 67th Street. And I think it was like a Parks Department video, like for Central Park. And so Jerry Nelson was there doing Robin, and I believe Steve Whitmire there was doing Kermit also. And I sat on the floor and got to watch it for a little bit. And then I had to go back to the PR internship down the street. So, and then, I guess I was probably like bummed out. I don't know. I was just like, hey, Robert, what else can I do to get over there at the Henson shop? I want to intern over there. So he told me to write, and this was back when we were writing letters, right? Not email. Tim Miller. So I sent Tim Miller, who worked for the Muppets. He was like, one of the head designers there. My cover letter and resume. Sorry. And he gave it to Connie Peterson. So I guess he felt that I wasn't right for his department. So, but Connie could use me.
And she was running the workshop, right?
Yeah. So there was a couple people in charge back then. So she was kind of like mostly in charge of costumes and walk around puppets.
Like the stuff they were doing, like Muppets on Ice and that kind of thing, or
yes, that kind of thing, and probably Big Bird or anything that was like a walk around, and other costumes. So she probably was like doling out. Okay, here, Barbara, make this Miss. Back then they still had all the Muppets, so make the Miss Piggy dress, and so she probably was just supervising all of that. But she was the one, and that got me the internship at Henson for the summer. So I finished the PR internship and went basically right over to the Muppet workshop and for my internship. But she didn't give it to me right away. She's just like, well, I'm kind of busy, but just call me every week and it'll happen. And so it did. It just, probably just took a couple of weeks. And I think I went in and I maybe brought in something that I'd sewn and showed her. And
how much experience had you had as a sewer, as a seamstress, as a builder before you started working in the workshop?
Yeah, not much at building, but I did have a kind of a bit of sewing experience. So growing up, my mom and my grandma, they sewed, and they would show me, and I learned there, and I would sew my own stuff. But then I guess probably the year prior, that summer, I went to the New Jersey Shakespeare Festival as an acting apprentice, but they made you do all the different crew stuff. And I found myself mostly sitting in the sewing costume room, and that's where I learned like the big machines, like the industrial machines. And yeah, I think I felt comfortable there, so that was really helpful. So some of my first assignments at the Henson workshop in that kind of gave me to do was, at the time, so Dinosaurs was still on, barely. Remember that show?
I do. What were they in the last season or something? Or?
Probably.
Yeah.
So she had me make all the battery packs. So not like the electronic parts yet.
No, but like
just
the little bags
like
that they would go into.
It was like a big Velcro belt, elastic, and lots of elastic and Velcro. And she gave me examples. She's like, "Here, do this." And so she was very happy with how I did it. I just was quiet. I was much more quiet than I am now, and I would just do my job because I just really wanted to be there. So I did that, made bunches of the battery packs. I made the headbands for the puppeteers that they put the headphone right there. I did a bunch of those. And I think I did a little bit of mending into some of the insides of the dinosaur puppets. And then the other thing that really sticks in my mind was, okay, so Christmas Carol was they were getting that ready that summer.
Oh, yeah.
And she had me, so I think it's Christmas Present. I don't know which one had the big robe. Whoever had the big robe, you guys are all screaming it out there, I'm sure.
I know somebody put it into the chat because I think it was Christmas Past.
Okay, so it's the one with the big head. He looks jolly and
Yeah.
nice, not a scary one. Anyway, so the fringe of his robe, and I was really shocked at the time, was that it was real rabbit fur. And so I was having to sew through like the rabbit pelt. And I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to keep doing this because I want to be here really badly. Anyway, that's all I have to say about that. Anyway, but Connie is still working there today. And so when I am at the shop, when I'm still at the Henson shop, which is now in Queens on Northern Boulevard, I'm always so excited because I get to see Connie every day. And I still let her know all the time. I say, Connie, you're the reason why I'm here, and she's really proud of that as well. So that makes me feel nice too.
That's a real treat. So we talked a little bit about Bart. I know you. So I didn't realize that was it a semester over at UConn?
So it was a full year, like my junior year. Instead of going abroad to England or something fancy, I went to Connecticut, and I actually stayed that summer too. So, and I helped Zeb Glassberg on her senior thesis. So I stayed like a little full year up there and took as many puppet classes as I could. So I kind of it's a good way to do it because I just kind of skipped all the requirements, the core curriculum, and Bart was the one who arranged it and let me do that. And I took every puppet class I possibly could. And that really, really helped me. And I stayed in touch. The next year was my senior year. And so I went back to Sarah Lawrence, and I was making puppets and puppeteering for little theater things, or actually there was a big production there that I made some puppets for. But I stayed in touch, and I would go back periodically during the year at UConn, and they were doing a production, and they needed some help on that. And so on the weekends, I would bring my respirator, and he was really into Scholastic, which they'd stopped making because it was so dangerous. But there was these replacement products called Salvaset, and for some reason, I was really good at that. So I would put on my respirator and help them out. I think it was some musical with that Milky White, that cow.
The Sondheim musical with the fairy tales that I can't think of right now. Yeah.
And it was screaming.
Somebody put it in the chat. You know what we're talking about. So you were making a Milky White cow puppet with the replacement for Scholastic.
Right. I went and helped them on the head a little bit. So I would jump back and forth. But then I remember, I guess because I was still there, not still there, but I would jump into the woods. Thank you.
Into the woods. And, thank you, John and Christopher.
So he had a bulletin board, and that's where I think I found out about the Humboldt State University Muppet workshop that we met at.
Oh,
and
nice.
He had the thing about that Sesame Live V Corp at the time in Minneapolis was hiring. And so that all because of Bart. That's how I learned about that job, and because of Connie. Connie knew, worked. She would go in and inspect and just make sure that all the Sesame Live characters were good. So she had a relationship with the V Corp, and so she probably put in a good word for me. So it all kind of just connected. And one more thing about Bart Rockburton is that I think he taught me a very, very most important thing about puppets is breath, which is something that we don't really talk about very much. But the quiet moments, and they're just when you're starting, how the puppet needs to breathe, and that really helps make puppets look alive. And so I'm always thinking about that if I'm trying to when I'm puppeteering. Anyway.
Yeah. That's it. That's a good one, right? So I see, the who's who of Muppeteers on your list as well, and I also see Rick Lyon. Did you? How is Rick? How did Rick influence your work? He's I've seen some videos of his, and I know he's like an organizational guy. I talked to a friend that used to work in a shop about the glue, the glue around the edge of the contact cement
barge.
Yes, the barge.
So I met him. He was still puppeteering at Sesame Street, and he needed help from time to time building. And it was actually I worked for him before he even had the shop. So I would go to his house. So if there was some dark time, when we're not shooting, or, I just had some time off, he would typically hire me. And even though, he always said he didn't want to teach, he wanted people that knew what they were doing. And I kind of knew what I was doing, but I really did learn from Rick and his precision and his methods. And that actually helped me when I was, I'd go. So then I'd go back to Henson, and I would feel more confident about what I was doing with the glue and cutting the foam with the razor blades and everything. So it really did help me going to work for Rick Lyon. And as a side note, it was me who introduced Rick Lyon to Jeff Marks and Bobby Lopez. And I'm in the big orange fluffy book, and I was in the cast for the 2 years before Broadway, and then I got booted out for Jen Barnhart, but we're still friends.
That must have been such not getting booted out, but during the creation process, that must have been so awesome to be part of.
It was cool.
Nice. What is John saying? I'm lucky to have learned so much from Lars. She's the best in the biz. Who's John Cody?
He works at the shop sometimes, and he's made all the puppets for that Pooh show that's on off Broadway now.
Oh, fantastic! We're going to New York and not this weekend, but next, and we may be able to sneak one of the morning performances to see the show. I've heard it's pretty good. Have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't seen it, but I know all the guys that are in it, and not all of them, but Jake. He plays Pooh, and it looks really great. Those puppets look really great.
They do.
A bunch of people I know have worked on making those puppets, and they're really big. And I worked on Book of Pooh back in 2000, so it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. But
it was such an incredible series. I mean, just what they were doing with the moving sets and with the the multi-person puppets and how they brought those ones to life. I mean, there were some talented puppeteers and some talented technology behind that show. I wish that show would have lasted for a little bit longer. It was just
it was two seasons. So again, this is where the wrangling came in. So I started out as a wrangler, but because they needed so many puppeteers, that first season I would typically be like Tigger's tail, and then by the second season, which was it was just right at one after the next, the Dan Weisberg, him, I think, maybe not, or maybe I think I'm getting names wrong. I'm not sure, but anyway, the guy who was doing the feet for Tyler's puppet Tigger, he left. And I slipped in and somehow got that job. So for the second season, I was Tigger's feet.
Wow, if you're going to be anyone's feet in that show, you want to be Tigger's feet, right?
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot. It was difficult. It was definitely a challenge. I liked it.
Nice. Did you get to wear the sexy lycra green screen suits and everything?
So those green screen suits are different. What was interesting about them is so the pants were the same. They're basically a screen spandex, but the tops, they thought they were being very exciting because they got this 3M product that had the glass embedded into the fabric, because the camera had the green ring of light, so it would go to that glass and come back, and so supposedly that would help with creases, and so there would be there wouldn't be as many shadows. But the masks were also made out of that stuff, and we were all kind of concerned that maybe we were inhaling glass.
Are you breathing glass? Yes.
Yeah, but
well, time
will
tell.
It was an interesting idea. I've never seen anyone use it before. What was bad about them was that you couldn't actually put them in the wash.
Oh boy.
You had to just spray them with vodka. It was kind of more like an overcoat. So you'd have like a t-shirt, a long sleeve t-shirt on underneath.
I know that the company's still selling the green screen with the glass embedded, and I mean, it's still out there. I saw it just a few months ago, but I don't know anyone else that's been bold enough to use it as puppetry suits.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen it used as a green screen either. I haven't seen it around since then, but I bet it's a similar technology to like the reflective tape, possibly.
Yeah. So when Muppets went to HBO and when they went to the new studio, and how is that? And they're shooting not quite as long. Is that
so? Right you're talking about Sesame Street.
Sesame, that's right.
Yeah. Pinpoint you.
Yeah, thank you.
Because even though Sesame Street is permitted to say Muppets, the Muppets were sold. The Muppet Show Muppets obviously were sold to Disney, so that's what I think of when you say Muppets. But yeah, Sesame Street is now on HBO, and now it's just a half an hour. And so the new programming goes on HBO first, and then I believe it's 6 months later. It might be 9 months later. It's also on PBS.
Right.
So it's still on PBS. It's on a little bit delayed. The new stuff goes on HBO. Honestly, I think that it didn't really change too much for me. I think that, they had hired some new producers even before they'd switched over to HBO. So that had kind of changed the tone of the show a little bit anyway. But I go in with just like, I'm at Sesame Street and maybe I have my blinders on or whatever. But to me, I pretend that it's still exactly the same as when I was a kid. And so I try to just have a good time.
Nice. Do you have a favorite character that you from Sesame Street that you like to work on, and B, just in general, like do you have a favorite character?
Well, I think I really like the Count. I loved him. I mean, Matt Vogel does him now, but I really think of him as the Jerry Nelson character, and Jerry Nelson was so amazing.
Absolutely. I loved when he and Grover were in the restaurant. Like those scenes were the ones that would always
with Fat Blue Mr. Johnson. Yeah, those are the best. I mean, I love Grover. I love Cookie Monster. I love Oscar the Grouch so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about some of your other mentors. So I know Marty Robinson. We had him on episode 1 of Meet Our Mentors. How is it working with Marty?
Well, because you were at Humboldt State University, and so was he. So I think that he was one of my first influencers just to teach teaching me how to puppeteer on a videos, for a video camera. And I was also at the first O'Neill that he did Jack Straws, and I puppeteered on that. I only did the O'Neill really the one time, and then I would come and watch. But so that first one that I got to do with him was pretty amazing. And now we work together all the time, and he's still very encouraging. And
and you guys are working together on Helpsters now too, right? Because he went over to I forget the name of the character that he plays with an awesome eyebrows.
Mr. Prim. Yeah, it's got a big mustache. And
it's the mustache that moves, right? Is that yeah?
Yep. And Jim Krupa does his hands, which is pretty ironic because Jim Krupa also has the crazy mustache. But so yeah, I feel like I mean, I still really look up to him, but we're more like peers, and we'll argue and stuff, and it's great.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Now I know Jim does all sorts of mechanisms and everything, and now you're getting into the remote control stuff. And did you have to learn a whole new skill set for the remote control stuff? Like how?
Well, that's interesting. So I know that so Jim Martin, who hasn't really been around at Sesame Street, he kind of I'll say retired a few years back.
He was on the Great Space Coaster too,
yes,
wasn't he? Like
yes,
Gary Gnu and yeah.
But he was always there when I started. And he was always so nice. And Alice Snuffleupagus, Snuffy's sister, had remote control eyes. And Jim Martin, I think, was assigned to do them, one day or a few days. And he would always be like, here, Lars, here's the remote control. Here's how you do it. So that's why I feel like I owe a lot to Jim Martin, because he was just like, give it a try, give it a shot. And I guess it was also my job to make sure that remote control was working at the time, making sure it was all juiced up and everything. So that's probably my first try with the remote control. And like I said, that gave me the confidence later on. Like when the tick called, I was like, yeah, I have done remote control. And also Elmo with Kevin Clash, he used to have his remote control Elmo, his animatronic Elmo, on the tricycle, sometimes not on the tricycle. And when he would get it ready, so it was kind of that Waldo thing. So it's like you're doing this, but the puppet's over there. And so he would have me say, okay, Lars, just move it and make sure it's working, while he'd be attending to the puppet where it was. So I felt between those two things that I had, that's how, not a ton of skill, but just enough that I felt like, okay, I can do this.
It takes such skill to be a right-hander, because you have to intuit the entire time. You have to be so tuned into the other performer and to the character itself. And when you're close to the other puppeteer, I find that it's a lot easier to right hand. But how is it to be like on the other side of the camera, or in a different room as you're doing antenna or eyeballs or something else? So
what I learned, and I guess knew this intuitively just from being around, I was like, hey, I need earphones. I need the Comtex, whatever you want to call them. I need to hear what they're saying over there. So immediately, the first thing I do when I'm doing that is I say to the audio guy, I need some earphones so I can hear. And that immediately helps, because then I can hear the cadence of the actor or the puppeteer's voice, and learning like just, and again, going with breath. And because that really does help me. And, especially both with the eyes, but also antenna, it really felt like adding emotion to it. The eyes do add emotion also. And yeah, so I'm listening. I'm also, reading the scripts, and they always read the scripts out loud before we do the scene. And so I'm always paying attention to that and listening.
Are you like making notes for yourself of like, this is what I'm
sometimes I try to just do it in my brain, because it's a lot for me to using two hands and to have a script there also. So I'm really trying to just learn it, and so I'll remember it and hearing the intonation. So and let me mention that it's Ingrid Hansen is inside Heart, and she's really amazing, and we get along very well too. And I think it does help to have a great rapport with the person that you're right-handing. And I feel like the RC stuff that I've done is also very much like right-handing.
No, absolutely. And once you get to know the actor that's playing the other parts of the character, are you able to intuit just a little bit more? And yeah.
I also had a great time with Peter Serafinowicz, and we would laugh all the time off camera, and it was just really great. So it definitely helps. And like I've right-handed years ago. Also, I remember maybe one of the first times I got to right hand for Marty, and he was like, "Hey, you're really good. Hey, you're really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." Hey.
You're
but
right.
but it just definitely helps. Yeah, if someone's not communicating with you, you're not going to be a good right hand. You can't be. You know, it's a two-parter thing. So it's always great when you're doing like a normal right handing. You know, if the person says, "Hey, at that moment, do this," or as much communication as you can have, and that's always good. It's just going to help.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I just think of the unity that so many of the Sesame Street characters have, especially when they've got more than one performer on them. It's just always really impressive. And so you've worked with just a lot of amazing people, and what I know Bart talked about breath. That's obviously you've carried that all the way through. What are some other things that you've learned from the people that have gone before you, or maybe now even colleagues with you? Like, what are some of those things that you've brought along as a performer and as a wrangler and as a person in the business?
Yeah. I would mention Carol Spinney because I got to spend a ton of time with him. We would travel together, going with Big Bird because Big Bird used to go to a lot of different places, and
he
so
would always be the guy that would go with the bird, right? I mean,
yeah, and then and Matt too.
Yeah.
But I learned from Carol, like he was always just so sweet and nice to everybody, and it just the kindness from him, but also both of his puppets, if you think about it, Big Bird and Oscar the Grouch had moving eyelids. And I know it sounds crazy, but when I'm doing Heart's eyes, Heart's eyes have the lids and the pupils that move. And I'm kind of thinking, oh yeah, that's kind of what Carol did with Oscar. And it just kind of, or with Big Bird, and it really does click in, like the memory of just watching him perform.
I mean, he was always so choosy with when he would. I mean, they weren't always like going all over the place, right? And so there was always those moments where it would really accent what Oscar or what Big Bird would be doing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like with Heart, the lids can go really, really open, and I'm always just using that as needed when Heart is very excited, or possibly Heart doesn't seem to be angry, but if like some sort of emotion that that's going to go all the way open, but I'm not going to use it much else besides that. Yeah, it's definitely keeping the limits on it. But from Carol, so I definitely learned probably just the emotions of characters, because that's what I feel like he was really great at with both of those characters, Big Bird and Oscar. What a great thing to have such a a sweet character versus a grumpy character. You can really, really do a lot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What advice would you give for someone, like, I know we were talking about Sedwin earlier, before we went on the air. What advice would you give to someone who's wanting to get into, maybe not at Muppet Studio or at Sesame Street, but who's wanting to get into this field? What advice would you give someone?
Well, the funny thing is, Sedwan is amazing, Sedwan Hooks, and he doesn't need my advice at all, but like I'll encourage him. But I think he's doing the right thing, which is he's building his own things, he's making his own stuff. I think that sometimes it's really hard to break in, and I know that I found myself years ago just like sitting in my apartment feeling really stunted because back then, there wasn't a whole lot of like puppet slams and things like that. So get out and take advantage of all those things, sign up for them, take a chance, make a puppet and get some people together and go and do those puppet slams and just keep doing it, do your own stuff. And, there's all these things like the Puppeteers Network where you can, there's people that, they're not going to want to pay a ton of money to build a puppet, but that's great for people that are just learning. You can say, "Oh, I'll make it free." And this is what I would do, because I remember I was building a couple times I built puppets early on for people, and I would say, "Hey, I'll build it for you if I get to keep it, and that I get to puppeteer it for you." So try to, I know people are always saying, "Hey, don't underbid yourself." Yeah, that's true, and we shouldn't. And we have to be consistent, and especially when you get to a certain level, not to underbid people. And but when you're just starting out, That's a good
Leverage it, man. Leverage it
good
for other pay.
bartering system is to get more experience and get what you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, good. If you've got any questions for Lars, go ahead and type them in the chat. Lars, it's been lovely talking with you. I'm just trying to make sure that we've covered all of the
I think we
mentors
almost have.
I think so. I think
Yep.
so too. Yeah. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. Lars, it's been
Okay.
lovely seeing you again. Hopefully it won't be this long. We were talking before we started the broadcast that the last time I saw you was, when Ruth Buzzy was still on the show, and I was walking to the studio and she was next to me. I was like, "You're Ruth Buzzy." And she said, "Yes, I am, young man." She was such a treat to have on the show. Was she fun to work with?
Oh yeah. And like I was telling you before, she's still doing well, and you can find her on Facebook. And I know she does cameos, and I think she's living in Arizona. But yeah, I miss her. I miss that old set because we've moved upstairs. So they basically, once they got rid of Around the Corner, they shrunk the set and moved upstairs.
Yeah, to the
So
smaller
we're still
studio.
at Kaufman, but
Yeah. Well, good. Well, Laura, thank you so much for spending some time with us on Meet Our Mentors. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. If you'd like to see episodes 1 through 3, they are available on the Puppeteers of America's Facebook site and also the Puppeteers of America's YouTube channel. So be sure to check out those episodes with previous Meet Our Mentors guests. Laura, again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all later.
Take
Happy
care.
Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy
See you all
Thanksgiving.
later. Bye.
Bye-bye.